When they stalked her for shoplifting, they saw a black woman with shopping bags. When they found her FBI badge, they saw their careers flash before their eyes. Detective Maya Johnson walks through a high-end department store, browsing casually after a long day at the bureau. She's dressed in a tailored pantsuit, her badge and gun concealed but properly holstered. She purchases a small gift for her niece's birthday and exits the store, receipt tucked in her shopping bag. As Maya walks toward her car in the parking lot, two police officers approach her from behind. Officer Daniels, a middle-aged white man with a stern expression, calls out to her while his younger partner, Officer Reed, flanks her other side. "Excuse me, ma'am. I need you to stop right there," Daniels shouts, his hand hovering near his holster. Maya turns around calmly, assessing the situation with the trained eye of a federal agent. "Is there a problem, officers?" Maya asks, her voice steady and professional. She notices several shoppers slowing down to watch the confrontation, some pulling out phones to record. "We've received a report that you've taken merchandise without paying," Officer Daniels says, eyes narrowing as he looks her up and down. "We need to check your bags." Maya takes a deep breath, recognizing the situation for what it is. "I have a receipt for everything I purchased today," she says, reaching slowly for her shopping bag. "Keep your hands where I can see them." Officer Reed suddenly shouts, his hand now on his weapon. "Turn around and place your hands against the car." "Officers, there's been a misunderstanding," Maya says calmly, keeping her hands visible. "I'm a federal agent with the FBI. If you'll allow me to slowly reach for my credentials." "I said hands on the car," Daniels interrupts, stepping forward aggressively. "We'll sort out your credentials after we check your bags." Maya reluctantly complies, knowing that escalating the situation could be dangerous. She places her hands on the hood of her car while Officer Reed begins searching her shopping bag. "Receipt's right here," Reed mumbles, pulling out the store receipt and comparing it to the items in the bag. Items match up. Officer Daniels, undeterred, continues with the detention. "We still need to conduct a search. Might have merchandise concealed on your person." "I'd like to speak to your supervising officer," Maya states firmly. "This stop is unwarranted, and I believe I'm being racially profiled." "Playing the race card already?" Daniels scoffs. "That's typical. Just cooperate, and this will go quickly." The growing crowd of onlookers has expanded, with several people openly recording the interaction on their phones. Maya notices a store security guard watching from a distance, speaking into his radio. The revelation scene represents the pivotal turning point in our narrative, where the power dynamic fundamentally shifts between our protagonist, Special Agent Maya Johnson, and the police officers who have wrongfully detained her. This scene carries immense dramatic weight as it exposes the officers' biased assumptions and forces them to confront the consequences of their actions in real time. As the tension reaches its peak with Maya pressed against her vehicle and Officer Daniels threatening to conduct a physical search, Maya makes a calculated decision. Drawing upon her extensive federal training in conflict de-escalation, she recognizes this as the optimal moment to reveal her true identity. The timing is crucial. She has allowed the officers to proceed far enough with their unwarranted detention that their misconduct is undeniable, creating a clear record of civil rights violations while intervening before a potentially dangerous physical alteration. Maya's voice transforms subtly as she shifts from the role of accused civilian to federal agent. Her tone becomes more commanding, infused with the unmistakable authority that comes from years of federal service. "I'm going to reach for my FBI credentials now," she announces with perfect clarity, each word precisely measured. The statement isn't a request for permission, but a professional courtesy notification. She maintains unwavering eye contact with Officer Daniels, letting him see the shift in her demeanor. Her movements display the methodical precision ingrained through bureau training. Maya's hand moves toward her inside jacket pocket with deliberate slowness, not out of fear, but following proper procedure when identifying oneself as an armed officer to other law enforcement. "I'm authorized to carry a service weapon, which is holstered at my right hip, she adds. This statement serves multiple purposes. It follows protocol for armed officers identifying themselves, prevents any misinterpretation of her movements, and begins establishing her authority in the situation. The body language of both officers changes instantly. Officer Reed, the younger and less experienced of the pair, displays the most visible reaction. His eyes widen appreciably as realization dawns, and his posture stiffens, the universal physical response of someone recognizing they've made a potentially career-ending mistake. The confidence that had fueled his aggressive approach evaporates, replaced by the dawning horror of understanding exactly who they've been detaining. Officer Daniels, being more experienced, attempts to maintain his composure, but the effort is visibly strained. The color drains from his face gradually, beginning around his mouth and spreading upward. His complexion shifts from the flushed red of confrontation to an ashen pallor. Perspiration forms at his temples despite the mild temperature. These physiological reactions occur involuntarily as his body processes the sudden, overwhelming stress of the situation. Maya's FBI credentials create an immediate visual impact when revealed. The gold badge catches the afternoon sunlight. The eagle emblem and Federal Bureau of Investigation, lettering clearly visible to everyone in the vicinity. The officers lean forward almost unconsciously, drawn to examine the identification that confirms their worst fears. The gathered crowd, which has been silently recording the confrontation, reacts with murmurs and increased activity, sensing the dramatic shift occurring before them. I'm Special Agent Maya Johnson, assigned to the Public Correction Unit of the FBI's field office in this city, she states evenly. Her voice carries across the parking lot with perfect clarity. The mention of the Public Correction Unit is particularly significant. This specialized division investigates abuses of public office, including civil rights violations by law enforcement. Maya deliberately includes this information to underscore the gravity of the situation the officers now find themselves in. She maintains unwavering eye contact with Daniels as she continues. Now, would you like to explain why I was stopped after making a legitimate purchase with a receipt? The question is posed professionally, but carries unmistakable weight. It's not merely an inquiry, but an invitation for Officer Daniels to acknowledge his misconduct on record, in front of multiple witnesses and cameras. Officer Daniels physically recoils, taking an involuntary step backward as the full implications register. His voice, previously commanding and authoritative when addressing someone he perceived as an easy target, now emerges strained and higher in pitch. We, received a report from store security about a shoplifting suspect matching your description. He manages, the hesitation and verbal stumble revealing his rapidly deteriorating confidence. Maya recognizes this explanation for what it is, a hastily constructed justification for a stop based on racial profiling rather than legitimate suspicion. With precision born from years of interrogation experience, she asks the question that exposes the core issue. And what exactly was that description, Officer Daniels? She deliberately uses his name, noting it from his badge, establishing that she's documenting this interaction for future reference. She continues with surgical precision. Because I noticed several other customers leaving the store with purchases while you specifically targeted me. This observation directly challenges the pretense of random selection or response to a specific report. It forces recognition of the selective enforcement that led to her detention, while similarly situated white shoppers exited the store undisturbed. Officer Reed, sensing the deteriorating situation, attempts to intervene. His nervousness manifests physically. A slight tremor in his hands, perspiration beading on his forehead, his weight shifting uncomfortably between feet. Ma'am, Agent Johnson, we were just following protocol based on the information provided to us. He offers, his verbal correction from ma'am to agent, unconsciously acknowledging the status shift that has occurred. Maya's response demonstrates her expertise in federal civil rights enforcement. I understand protocol, Officer Reed. I also understand violations of federal civil rights statutes and the proper procedures for detaining a suspect, which weren't followed here. Her words are measured and factual rather than accusatory, but they carry the unmistakable weight of professional assessment. She isn't threatening them directly. She's simply stating facts that both officers recognize as potentially devastating to their careers. The atmosphere in the parking lot has transformed completely from when the confrontation began. The power dynamic has inverted entirely. The officers, who minutes earlier had been aggressive and domineering, now stand uncomfortably exposed. Their body language reflects their psychological state. Shoulders hunched slightly inward in a defensive posture, weight shifted back as if physically retreating from the situation, hands now kept carefully visible and non-threatening. Maya stands taller now, her full professional bearing evident. No longer playing the role of the compliant civilian, she occupies the space with the natural authority of her position. The shopping bags that were the pretext for her detention now rest at her feet, rendered irrelevant by the larger issues at play. The receipt that she had attempted to show earlier now serves as physical evidence of the unwarranted nature of the stop. The crowd of onlookers has grown substantially, drawn by the palpable tension and dramatic reversal unfolding before them. Smartphones capture every moment. The modern witnesses ensuring this interaction will extend far beyond the immediate participants. Some observers exchange knowing glances, recognizing a scenario they've experienced or witnessed before, now seeing justice unfold in real time. The store manager and head of security rush toward the scene, their faces locked in expressions of alarm as comprehension dawns regarding what has transpired. The manager's body language communicates panic, quickened steps, hands gesturing anxiously, gaze darting between Maya and the officers. He recognizes the potential liability the store now faces for initiating the false report that led to this confrontation. "Officers, there's been a terrible mistake," the manager announces breathlessly, perspiration visible on his forehead despite the cool temperature. "Our new security trainee misidentified Agent Johnson. We have the actual shoplifting suspect in custody inside." This revelation adds another layer to the situation. Not only was Maya wrongfully detained, but the actual suspect had already been apprehended, making the officers' actions even less justifiable. The officers received this information like a physical blow. Daniel's face, already pale, now takes on an almost ghostly quality. Reed looks physically ill, visibly swallowing as if fighting nausea. The realization that they've detained an FBI agent on completely baseless grounds, while the actual suspect was already in custody, creates a perfect storm of professional misconduct that both recognize could have career-ending ramifications. Maya observes these reactions with the trained eye of an investigator, noting each physiological response as indicators of consciousness of guilt. She doesn't gloat or express anger. Such emotional displays would be unprofessional and unnecessary. The situation speaks for itself, and her position gives her the authority to ensure appropriate consequences will follow. Instead, she transitions seamlessly into evidence collection mode, her years of field experience evident in her methodical approach. "I'll need your badge numbers, names of your supervising officers, and incident report numbers," she states calmly, retrieving her phone to document this information. "I'll also need the security footage from both the store and this parking lot preserved immediately." The store manager's eager compliance, "Of course, Agent Johnson. Will cooperate fully," contrasts sharply with the officer's earlier dismissal of Maya's attempts to explain herself. This verbal affirmation, delivered in front of multiple witnesses, establishes a commitment to preserve crucial evidence that will be necessary for any subsequent investigation. Maya turns her attention back to the officers, delivering what amounts to a preliminary assessment of their conduct. "I understand you were responding to a call, but the manner in which you conducted this stop raises serious concerns. The Public Corruption Unit investigates civil rights violations by law enforcement, among other things." She delivers this information not as a threat, but as a professional courtesy. A federal agent informing local officers about jurisdiction and procedure regarding the incident that has just occurred. Officer Daniels attempts to reassert some measure of professional dignity, mustering what remains of his earlier confidence. Agent Johnson, we were just doing our jobs based on the information. He begins, but the justification sounds hollow even to his own ears. Maya cuts him off with the precision of someone who has heard similar excuses throughout her career investigating misconduct. Your job includes proper identification procedures, reasonable suspicion standards, and unbiased policing. We'll be reviewing whether those standards were met today. Her statement serves as both correction and warning, a clear indication that this incident will not be dismissed or forgotten once she leaves the scene. The revelation scene concludes with this decisive shift in power and perspective. What began as a routine case of racial profiling has transformed into a potential federal civil rights investigation. The officers, who entered the interaction with the unexamined confidence of those accustomed to unquestioned authority, now face the consequences of that misplaced confidence. And Maya, initially forced into a defensive position by biased assumptions, now stands firmly in her authority as a federal agent committed to ensuring accountability. Beyond the immediate confrontation, this scene establishes the foundation for the systemic changes that will unfold in the remainder of the story. The personal has become professional, and what might have been dismissed as an isolated incident will now receive the full scrutiny of federal oversight, potentially leading to broader reforms in the department's approach to community policing. When the manager stammers, "Officers, there's been a terrible mistake," his choice of words is particularly significant. By characterizing what happened as a mistake, rather than an incident or situation, he's already attempting to frame it as an unintentional error rather than a systemic failure or act of discrimination. His revelation that our new security trainee misidentified Agent Johnson attempts to localize blame to a single inexperienced employee, seeking to minimize institutional responsibility. The manager's final statement that "we have the actual shoplifting suspect in custody inside" creates a devastating context for the officers' actions. They were pursuing an innocent woman while the actual suspect had already been apprehended. The physical reactions of the officers are deliberately detailed to show the psychological impact of this revelation. Daniel's face has turned ashen, not just pale from the initial shock of discovering Maya's identity, but now completely drained of color as he comprehends the full legal and professional jeopardy he faces. Officer Reed's reaction is even more visceral, looking like he might be sick as the adrenaline of the confrontation gives way to the nauseating realization of what they've done. These physical manifestations represent the internal collapse of their authority and confidence. Maya's response to this situation demonstrates her transition from the object of discrimination to an agent of accountability. Her request for badge numbers, names of supervising officers, and incident report numbers follows precise bureau protocol for documenting potential civil rights violations. By pulling out her phone to take notes, she signals that this incident has transformed from a personal affront to an official matter potentially deserving formal investigation. Her additional request for preservation of security footage from both the store and this parking lot demonstrates her understanding of how easily evidence can disappear in these situations. The store manager's enthusiastic response, "Of course, Agent Johnson, we'll cooperate fully," reveals how quickly authority figures pivot when confronted with someone who holds actual power. The same retail establishment that minutes ago was willing to criminalize Maya based on her appearance now offers eager compliance, highlighting how differently individuals are treated based on perceived status and authority. When Maya addresses the officers again, she balances professional courtesy with clear boundaries. Her acknowledgement that they were responding to a call offers the minimal professional respect of recognizing they didn't initiate the situation. However, she immediately establishes that this context doesn't excuse their conduct, noting that the manner in which you conducted this stop raises serious concerns. Her mention of the Public Corruption Unit's role in investigating civil rights violations by law enforcement serves as both information and warning. She's educating them about the potential consequences while establishing her authority in this domain. Officer Daniels' attempt to justify their actions, "We were just doing our jobs based on the information," represents the common deflection strategy of claiming to simply follow procedure. It's a telling moment that shows his instinct to avoid personal responsibility, even as the evidence of misconduct mounts. The dash in his statement indicates he was cut off before completing his defense, suggesting his explanation was deemed insufficient by Maya. Maya's response systematically dismantles this defense by redefining what doing their jobs actually entails, by specifically naming proper identification procedures, reasonable suspicion standards, and unbiased policing as components of their professional obligations. She identifies the specific failures that occurred. Her statement that "we'll be reviewing whether those standards were met today" serves as both promise and warning. Accountability will follow this incident, regardless of the officer's attempts to minimize it. The consequences extend beyond the immediate scene, as shown by the time jump to 2 weeks later, in Maya's meeting with Police Chief Harrison. This temporal shift allows us to see how the incident has expanded from an isolated confrontation to a departmental issue requiring high-level attention. The presence of Maya's FBI supervisor, Assistant Special Agent in charge Marcus Williams, elevates the significance further, showing that the Bureau is treating this as a matter worthy of leadership involvement. Chief Harrison's admission that the internal investigation found clear evidence of procedural violations acknowledges institutional failure. His physical act of sliding a folder across his desk represents the formalization of these findings. The incident has now generated official documentation that cannot be ignored or dismissed. The specific mention of body camera footage, combined with the store surveillance and witness videos, underscores how modern technology has made accountability more possible. This isn't Maya's word against the officers, but a multi-source documented record of misconduct. The chief's characterization of the evidence, showing a pattern of behavior consistent with biased policing, is particularly significant. This language acknowledges not just procedural errors, but the specific issue of bias, while still using somewhat bureaucratic phrasing that stops short of directly calling his officers racist. This linguistic caution reflects the institutional reluctance to fully name and address discrimination, even when confronting it. ASAC Williams' response: "We appreciate your thoroughness, Chief Harrison. The Bureau had concerns this wasn't an isolated incident," reveals that Maya's experience has triggered broader FBI interest in the department's practices. The implication that the Bureau already had concerns suggests possible previous complaints or incidents that didn't receive proper attention until a fellow law enforcement officer became a victim. The revelation that the internal review uncovered 17 similar incidents involving these officers in the past year alone transforms the narrative from addressing a single incident to confronting a pattern of systemic misconduct. This finding validates Maya's experience as part of a larger problem, rather than an unfortunate misunderstanding. The chief's statement that both officers have been placed on administrative leave pending disciplinary hearings shows that tangible, if preliminary, consequences have resulted from Maya's decision to pursue accountability. Maya's question about systemic changes, rather than just individual punishment, demonstrates her understanding that true reform requires addressing root causes rather than simply removing bad apples. Her concern for others who don't have an FBI badge to protect them acknowledges her privilege in this situation. Her federal credentials gave her leverage that ordinary citizens, particularly people of color, wouldn't have had in similar circumstances. Chief Harrison's deep sigh before outlining the reforms indicates reluctance or perhaps wariness at confronting entrenched problems. His mention of mandatory retraining on implicit bias acknowledges the role of unconscious prejudice in policing disparities. The implementation of a new civilian review process and quarterly data analysis to identify potential patterns of discriminatory policing represent structural changes that could create ongoing accountability beyond this single incident. Maya's response that her experience was humiliating, but I had resources and authority many citizens don't have, demonstrates her empathy for others in similar situations without her protective status. Her observation that the real issue is systemic shows her focus on the broader context rather than personal vindication. Her statement that she's glad to see you addressing it as such offers professional acknowledgement of the chief's commitments while maintaining gentle pressure for follow-through. The final scene with the young black woman approaching Maya in the parking lot provides crucial closure by connecting Maya's individual experience to the larger community impact. This woman's hesitant approach, "Excuse me, are you Agent Johnson?" suggests both vulnerability and hope. Her revelation that those same officers stopped me last month, accused me of using a stolen credit card. It was my own card confirms the pattern of misconduct and validates the chief's findings about previous incidents. The exchange of looks between Maya and Williams before Maya engages with the woman demonstrates their shared understanding of the significance of this moment. This is exactly why addressing systemic issues matters. Maya's invitation to hear your story, if you're willing to share it, offers dignity and agency to someone previously victimized by the same officers. The woman's response, "I thought no one would ever believe me," poignantly captures the isolation and helplessness felt by many victims of racial profiling who lack institutional power. Her expression of gratitude, "Thank you for standing up to them," acknowledges Maya's role not just as a fellow victim, but as someone who used her position to create accountability. Maya's final statement that every voice matters in creating change, "Your experience deserves to be heard too," establishes the theme of collective action and shared responsibility. By handing the woman her business card, Maya creates a tangible connection between institutional power and community experience, suggesting that this encounter may lead to further documentation of the officer's pattern of misconduct. The aftermath scene represents the culmination of our narrative, serving as both resolution and expansion of the story's central themes. It moves beyond the immediate consequences to explore the longer-term impact of Maya's experience on institutional reform and community healing. The scene opens 2 weeks after the confrontation, a deliberate time jump that allows for the institutional wheels of accountability to have begun turning. The setting of Police Chief Harrison's office establishes this as an official meeting rather than an informal follow-up. This physical environment, likely featuring imposing furniture, departmental commendations on the walls, and the trappings of authority, creates a stage for the power dynamics that unfold. Maya's presence in this space carries significant symbolism. She now enters the police department not as a victim or witness, but as a federal authority figure participating in oversight. The detail that she's accompanied by her FBI supervisor, Assistant Special Agent in Charge Marcus Williams, elevates the stakes further. Williams' presence signals that this is not merely Maya pursuing a personal grievance, but the Bureau taking institutional interest in the department's practices. The FBI's involvement represents federal oversight of local law enforcement, a powerful dynamic in American policing. Chief Harrison's opening statement, "The internal investigation findings are clear," acknowledges institutional responsibility without equivocation. His physical action of sliding the folder across his desk represents the transformation of Maya's experience into official documentation. What began as a humiliating personal encounter has become formalized into findings, reports, and recommendations, the currency of institutional accountability. The specificity of the evidence mentioned, body camera footage combined with the store surveillance and witness videos, highlights how modern technology has transformed accountability in policing. In previous eras, Maya's account might have been dismissed as her word against the officers, but the multiple video sources create an irrefutable record. This detail also connects to the crowd of onlookers who recorded the original confrontation, showing how civilian documentation contributed to eventual justice. Harrison's admission that the officers failed to follow proper protocols employs the careful language of institutional acknowledgement, recognizing misconduct while using terminology that somewhat distances the behavior from explicit bias. However, his next statement crosses this line by acknowledging a pattern of behavior consistent with biased policing. This progression from procedural violation to recognized bias represents a significant institutional step that many police departments resist. ASAC Williams' response that the Bureau had concerns this wasn't an isolated incident reveals important context. Maya's experience likely connected to previous complaints or patterns that hadn't yet triggered institutional response. His statement suggests the FBI had been monitoring the department, perhaps receiving civil rights complaints, but lacked the leverage or evidence to intervene until an agent became a victim. This detail illustrates how even serious patterns of misconduct can continue until someone with power experiences them directly. The revelation of 17 similar incidents involving these officers in the past year alone transforms the narrative from addressing a single incident to confronting systemic misconduct. This specific number, 17, gives concrete weight to what might otherwise be dismissed as anecdotal. The detail that both officers have been placed on administrative leave pending disciplinary hearings shows tangible, if preliminary, consequences resulting from Maya's decision to pursue accountability. Maya's pivotal question, beyond discipline, what systemic changes will be implemented to prevent this from happening to others who don't have an FBI badge to protect them, demonstrates her understanding that true reform requires addressing root causes rather than simply removing bad apples. This question shifts the conversation from individual punishment to institutional transformation, revealing Maya's commitment to justice beyond her personal situation. Chief Harrison's deep sigh before outlining reforms indicates the weight of confronting entrenched problems. His mention of mandatory retraining on implicit bias acknowledges the role of unconscious prejudice in policing disparities. The implementation of a civilian review process represents a significant power shift, introducing external oversight to practices previously judged only internally. The quarterly data analysis to identify potential patterns of discriminatory policing introduces empirical accountability, replacing anecdotal dismissals with statistical evidence that can reveal patterns invisible at the individual case level. Maya's response that her experience was humiliating, but I had resources and authority many citizens don't have, demonstrates her recognition of privilege even within the context of discrimination. Her FBI credentials provided leverage that ordinary citizens, particularly people of color, wouldn't have in similar circumstances. Her observation that the real issue is systemic shows her focus on the broader context, rather than personal vindication. Her statement that she's glad to see you addressing it as such offers professional acknowledgement of the chief's commitments while maintaining gentle pressure for follow-through. The scene's transition to the parking lot creates a symbolic full circle, returning to the type of space where the original confrontation occurred, but now with transformed power dynamics. This environment, outside the formal confines of the police station, provides a neutral ground for the civilian encounter that follows. The approach of the young black woman represents the community dimension of the story's resolution. Her hesitant manner, "Excuse me, are you Agent Johnson?" suggests both vulnerability and hope. Her recognition of Maya from witnessing or hearing about the mall incident establishes how public the confrontation became, likely through social media and community networks. Her revelation that those same officers stopped me last month, accused me of using a stolen credit card, confirms the pattern of misconduct and validates the chief's findings about previous incidents. The detail that it was my own card highlights the absurdity and humiliation of being criminalized for ordinary activities. The exchange of looks between Maya and Williams before engaging with the woman demonstrates their shared understanding of this moment's significance. As federal agents investigating civil rights violations, they recognize this spontaneous civilian contact as precisely why addressing systemic issues matters. It's not about a single incident, but a pattern affecting entire communities. Maya's invitation to hear your story, if you're willing to share it, offers dignity and agency to someone previously victimized without recourse. Rather than immediately directing her into formal complaint channels, Maya first acknowledges her experience as worthy of being heard. a human connection before an institutional one. The statement, "This is exactly why accountability matters," connects the personal encounter to the larger systemic reforms discussed with the chief. The woman's response, "I thought no one would ever believe me," captures the isolation and helplessness felt by many victims of racial profiling who lack institutional power. Her expression of gratitude, "Thank you for standing up to them," acknowledges Maya's role not just as a fellow victim, but as someone who used her position to create accountability. Maya's final statement that every voice matters in creating change establishes the theme of collective action and shared responsibility. By handing the woman her business card, Maya creates a tangible connection between institutional power and community experience. This small physical object represents access to justice systems previously perceived as unresponsive or hostile. The woman's smile with relief illustrates the emotional impact of being believed after previous dismissal. Her experience being heard too suggests not just collecting another complaint, but recognizing the human dignity denied in discriminatory encounters. This detailed examination of the aftermath scene reveals how it serves as both resolution and expansion. It resolves the immediate question of whether the officers would face consequences, while expanding the impact beyond individual punishment to institutional reform. It connects Maya's individual experience to broader community patterns and establishes ongoing mechanisms for accountability rather than a one-time response. The scene completes Maya's arc from victim to advocate, using her privileged position to create space for others' experiences to be validated. It demonstrates how individual incidents of discrimination connect to systemic patterns, and how meaningful reform requires both institutional policy changes and human connections across power differences. The aftermath doesn't present a simplistic happy ending where racism is solved, but rather a realistic step toward justice through accountability, data, oversight, and the empowerment of previously silenced voices.